We've been talking about what would Jesus do. So this week, I wanted to start off with a very interesting story y'all may or may not know. It is from the book of 2 Kings. So let's just dive right in. Let's see, how do I do? I do that one and then that one. And in 2 Kings, it says this. I'm sorry, I need a little bit more context before we start. So let's go back to this. Okay, so before we dive in, I forgot where we were starting this specific story. 2 Kings picks up with Elisha. Now, if you recall, Elisha is the disciple of Elijah, who was one of the prophets. And the prophets are people that were sent by God to basically remind the Hebrews, the kingdom of Israel, hey guys, remember this? Hey guys, remember this? Hey guys, you're slacking off. Hey guys, hey guys, hey guys. That was the hey guys is what I call, no, I don't call them that, but I just did just now. That's what the prophet's job was. So Elijah just ascended to heaven in this huge big deal, and he left Elisha as his successor. And Elisha is supposed to be even greater. He's supposed to be twice as great as Elijah. And as soon as it happens, this happens. He turned around, Elisha does, looked at them. Oh my goodness, where's my first verse? It's right here. I'm sorry, I got them out of order. From there, Elisha went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some boys came out of the town and jeered at him. "Get out of here, Baldy," they said. "Get out of here, Baldy." He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. So, fun times. What's going on? Why is this in the Bible, and why are we talking about it? The problem that we have with this story, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this story before. Again, 2 Kings is not usually the first one that we go to, but it's so bizarre that these kids come out and first off, they say, "Get out of here, Baldy," which is like, big dig, man. Like, good on ya. And then Elisha responds by calling a bear, or God sends these 2 bears to kill 42 boys. It's so crazy. But a little bit of context, and not only that, but then the next question, why the heck are we talking about this at all? So the first one is them saying baldy, or technically bald head is actually the specific translation. And the old, like King James, translated as "get up from here," or get up from here, you bald head, was the insult in the King James. Which is, we look at that and we're like, that's such a stupid insult. Why are you upset about that? But to be bald in that time was a much bigger deal. Because one, I mean, as you guys hopefully know, like Hebrews, Jews today, covering your head is a really big deal. It's a sign of respect to God. So to be bald, especially back in those days, was either an insult to God or was a sign that you were a leper and unclean. So either way, being bald was a big insult. And then you add to that where they're coming from. They're coming from Bethel, which is this town that was really like, not struggling. They were very like, I don't know that they were anti-God. They were really big into another God. They were big into Baal. So they were already very sinful. And then they start mocking God's chosen prophet by saying, "You're bald. You're not even really a man. You know, you're an embarrassment to God." Like, all of these things is what baldy insinuates. So it is a pretty big insult to say baldy. Not only are they mocking Elisha, but in a way they are mocking God. Is how he would have taken that. Second thing is, when it says boys, boys doesn't mean like kids. And there are some translations that actually literally says the word children. But much more accurate would be young men. They were probably in their like 17, 18, 20, somewhere in that range there, which still doesn't make it like great, but it's not like they're innocent, don't know what they're doing. Like, no, they know what they're doing. They are intentionally insulting the prophet of God. So for us, we see this as much less God being crazy and Elisha being a jerk, and more, or overreacting at the very least, but more how seriously God takes his name. You don't insult God. Like, that's a really big deal. God is protective over his name and and making sure that Elisha was respected. That this is not, I'm sure there's some symbolism in the fact that 42, why mention 42 boys? That's probably very significant. 2 female bears. Why are they female? Why is there 2 instead of 1 crazy bear? Like, does 2 make it like, oh, well, 2 bears could probably take 42 of them down? Like, who knows? There's a lot going on here. But the reason that we're talking about it today is because we are talking about teasing, about mocking, about slander, and that is one of the most dramatic pictures, one of the main pictures that we have in the Bible about being teased and what that looks like. So, as you guys know, in this series, we've been talking about what would Jesus do, how does what Jesus taught actually affect the way that we live our lives on a daily basis. So this week, we're answering the specific question, people make fun of me because I, wear glasses, because I don't have cool clothes, because I'm not in the cool crowd, because I don't, because I do, because I, whatever, people make fun of me for this, what would Jesus do? And I think that's a big deal because, let's be honest, we all deal with teasing, right? Like, teasing is something, whether it's teasing to and from our siblings, whether it's our friends, whether it's our enemies, whether it's school, whether it's all teasing is a part of our reality. So what does Jesus say? What would Jesus do in these situations? So first off, the challenge with teasing, is what is teasing? Because I feel like sometimes, in that story, it feels like this is a very insignificant thing. Just teasing somebody is just having a little bit of fun. It's like I saw something where it says what was it? It was this kid saying, can you help me tie my shoes? And then the other kid said, you don't know how to tie your shoes? Which sounds like a pretty little deal, right? However, I think that's the thing about teasing is there's a line between fun and hurt that is very blurry, where this is actually going to be, because I think the reality is, and we'll talk about this, the reality with teasing is that it's usually more, the thought is more, I'm enjoying this rather than they're going to enjoy this. The line between this is actually going to hurt someone as opposed to they're just actually going to enjoy this and this is going to be fun. Sometimes it hurts more than is intended. There's a lot of words that the Bible uses more than teasing. It uses slander, which slander would be like insulting somebody. Bald head, like directly saying you are stupid, or you are bad at this, or you can't do, or whatever, direct slander. Then the second one would be gossip, and gossip would be slander that I'm telling somebody else about somebody else, where it's like, hey, Bella can't do this, or hey, Noah does this, or whatever. That would be gossip. If it's what is it? Indirect slander, or slandering someone else to somebody else. So let's break this down. When we're teased, let's start off. What would Jesus do when he's teased? If I'm teased, what do I do? How does Jesus help me here? And I think the challenge is, in our world, I'm guessing you guys, because everybody's heard this, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, right? We've all said that. We've all heard that. We that sort of a thing. But the tough thing is that what that's saying is just ignore it. The words are not going to hurt you, so just let it go. And the reality is not only is that tough, it's not very helpful and not very Jesus-y. Jesus would definitely not say that, because here's the reality, and you guys know this, and I think we all know this even though we say that phrase, is that yes, it's true that a stick or a stone or a weapon or a whatever will physically hurt me, and yes, a word will not physically hurt me. But how much is a stick and a stone going to emotionally, spiritually, personally, socially hurt me? Whereas a word can do all of that. And not only that, but let's be honest, unless it's a grave injury, most injury that a stick or a stone is going to do is going to heal, and relatively quickly. But a word, the amount of time that it takes to heal a word, can take a really long time. Like as an example, actually, let's hold off on that one because it's more about specifically about teasing. Because here's the thing, like with teasing, I think the challenge for us when we're teased is there is a lot of peer pressure, or at least pressure to just like laugh along with everybody else, right? Because then I'm in on the joke and I don't want to show that it actually hurt my feelings, because that'd be even worse. But if instead it's just like, oh, you're right, I can't tie my shoes, that's me, all right. Like that somehow makes it feel more acceptable. And ironically, it makes the other person feel better, but we're just kind of hiding the pain that may have actually caused. And I think for me, the question is usually like, one, is this striking a nerve? Because the reality is, if somebody's going to tease me like, hey, Jeff, you can't tie your shoes, I'm like, yes, I can. Like, that's a nothing. That's like, you're trying to insult me, which that might be the offense right there. Like, why are you trying to insult me? What did I do that makes you want to offend me, or like whatever? But if it doesn't actually strike a nerve, what's the big deal? But if they're teasing me about something that does strike a nerve, where it's like, hey, Jeff, like your hair looks like it's receding a little bit, like, now that makes me very uncomfortable, because let's be honest, I'll be honest, I'm a little uncomfortable with the fact that it doesn't feel like my hair comes down as far as it used to, and it looks like I'm getting older, maybe. Or like, hey, Jeff, looks like you got some gray in that beard. Like, oh, and if I showed up the next day with a dyed beard, clearly it struck a nerve. Clearly that was something that actually did hurt. So I think part of the solution is letting people know that did actually hurt. And that's tough. Don't get me wrong. That breaks a lot of social conventions. You're supposed to laugh. People are going to be like, oh, they're so sensitive and stuff like that. But if this is a friend of yours and they're teasing you about something, like if somebody teased me, like a student teased me a while ago about a picture that I took last year where I just cut my hair, and they're like, wow, looks like you're losing your hair there, Jeff. That hurt. I don't know if they meant that to hurt. That was probably just a tease, and and if I would have said like, hey man, like that really stung, that really hurt, that might change it, right? They might be like, oh man, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I just thought it was just an off-the-hand comment. So I think that can actually help, but you don't, especially if we don't respond in anger, if we don't say, how dare you say that about me? Like, who do you think you are? Like, whatever. If instead we respond with more just gentle correction, I think there's possibility there. So another example for myself is, I remember in high school, I had my Latin teacher was this guy, Mr. Davis, who was great, teacher of the year. He was so much fun, and he was teaching Latin, but he was fun. He was a character. He was very charismatic and loud, and one of his things that he would always, whether it was because he was insensitive or he was sensitive about it, so he decided to make it a big deal, whatever it was that he had a large nose. Not like freakishly large, but just like a big nose. And he would talk about his big nose. And like whether that was, hey, I'm hip with middle school or high schoolers or whatever. And so I remember one year, senior year, it was like senioritis, so like the class was pretty much done. And so the senior, we were kind of like talking about personal stuff and whatever. And one of the gals was lamenting about like, oh, no boy's gonna ever like me and blah, 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 because my nose is too big. And he's just like, are you kidding me? Like, you're gonna talk about your nose? Like, look at this thing. Like, I got that. So he literally took out a ruler, measured her nose, and then measured his nose to see, like, look at that. You got nothing. Like, I got a full centimeter on you, or whatever it was. And then he said, there's only one person here that could possibly compete with me. Jeff, come on over here. Like, let's go take a look at the shot. And so then he measured my nose, and my nose was the same size as his. And I was like, now, he meant that, and probably by knowing me, I mean, I guess I'm excusing his behavior, but like by knowing me, he was like, well, Jeff's pretty confident and Jeff doesn't, like offended by things along these lines. So it's some form of like teasing. But at least for me, I had never pictured myself having like a large nose. I thought I just had a normal nose. And that was pretty, like, there are definitely times where now I'm a guy with a big nose. And it's somewhat like, it's not something I'm proud of. It's something that it's like, oh yeah, that's like something that is negative about my physical appearance. And so it strikes a chord. Like, it actually hurts. Now, if I would have told Mr. Davis, hopefully, like, hey, Mr. Davis, like, man, that kind of hurt. I feel fairly confident that he would have, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that to offend you. I was, yeah, that's my bad. And forgiveness and stuff like that, I think can be good to come out of that. Part 2, what about when we tease? Let's flip that around, because why do we tease? Because let's be honest, we do. Now, sometimes it's teasing between friends. And again, that line between teasing people, making fun of each other, having fun, making light of things that are serious. Sometimes, I would say there's 3 times that it happens a lot. There's one that's that making light of something, which, again, we can talk about that in a second. Another one is when we are uncomfortable. Boys and girls tease each other a lot. Like, I remember hearing the reason that like early elementary boys and girls hit each other so often, especially boys. Well, actually it goes both directions. Girls don't like, it's not like punch them in the face, but it's this idea of like slapping, or like even tag is kind of and they said it's because they've recognized that there are differences between the genders, and they're somehow pulled towards, there's like a interest there, but they're uncomfortable. So like physical, like smacking or whatever is the easiest form of physical contact that still makes them comfortable. I think it's the same thing with teasing. Very uncomfortable saying like, hey, I like you, but instead to kind of like give the attention in a negative way can soften that for some reason. And then a second one, or I guess a third one, because the first one is the making light of things, is a third one is I am insecure, so by making fun of someone else, that makes me feel better. Either by taking the attention off of me, or now I'm the one in control because I'm the one putting down somebody else through teasing, but I'm putting somebody else. And that's bullying, That's making myself feel better by making you feel worse. And again, it needs to come down to that asking ourselves why. Why are we doing this? What is it about me that makes me like want to do that to you? So, in the end, what would Jesus do? What do we do with these things when we're teasing people, when someone else is teasing us? And the example I wanted to use very briefly, because we are out of time, is Jesus talks about it somewhat with anger, right? He says this, he says, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you should not murder, and anyone who murders is subject to judgment. But I tell," come on, what happened? There you go. "But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Rakah,' is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, 'You fool,' will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you're offering your gift on the altar and see that someone has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar and first be reconciled and then come and offer your gift." So, yes, that is talking about murder. What in the world does murder and anger have to do with teasing? But it does. He uses the specific example of rakah, which rakah would be basically Hebrew for like idiot, or Aramaic, I guess. Like, you idiot, and you fool, somewhat similar. And we've talked about this before, about how those words back then weren't used as easily as they are today. To call someone an idiot would be like I'm challenging you to a dual sort of a level of insult. But the idea is that through slander, through an insult, like, what are we doing? And Jesus obviously makes these a really big deal by saying idiot, by saying you fool, like you're in danger of the fire of hell is what he's saying. And it's what I think, insulting someone, whether it's intentional, whether we mean it that not, but ultimately what it can do at least is you are questioning the choices people make, questioning someone's character, questioning who they are. It can hit really close to the bone, right? If you're saying like, you fool, like, how could you do this? Or how could you do this? Like, they probably, either they made a mistake and then they feel bad about it already, or they thought they were making the best choice with their available information. And to say, well, you're stupid then. Well, you're a fool. Like, how, one, okay, is that teasing? Maybe that's going beyond teasing. But the line there, how can this be love? If Jesus calls us to love our neighbors, how can teasing really be love? Because the bottom line for me is, do I think that I know enough, am confident enough, and secure enough, and compassionate enough towards somebody else that I can tease in a loving way? I don't. I don't have enough trust in myself that I care enough about others that I'm sure what I'm doing is not hurting them. Ephesians 4 is I think the passage to land on with this one, because Paul says this: do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. What would it look like if we, as followers of Christ, did that? What if we were people, not that we're fuddy-duddies, not that we're always serious, but isn't it possible that the way we interact with our friends, with our neighbors, with our brothers, with our sisters, we can interact through building people up rather than teasing them and tearing them down? What would it look like for us to actually do it that way instead of, making light of something, lessening it, being awkward, whatever reason that we tease? And when we tease, how do we respond? Can we respond not out of anger, not out of frustration, but out of understanding and out of love? It's not easy, but I think it's possible, and I think that's what Jesus calls us to. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this time, and I pray for your assistance in this one. Teasing is something that is definitely a part of our lives. It's something that we deal with all the time, whether we think it's serious or whether we don't. Whether it's a big deal, whether it's a little deal, it's all over the place. And we need your help to deal with that as you would, because it feels like not teasing people, we feel like we're just too serious and we're too a bunch of us, we're not having fun enough. But not teasing people seems like it's the way of love. So what does that look like to balance that? What does it look like to love as you do? Thank you. We love you. And in Jesus' name, amen.